Yeah, hi. Welcome to another exciting episode of Value Seller Talks with Deepak Bajaj. I'm your host Deepak, and today we have a privilege of hosting a distinguished guest whose expertise spans across multiple industries with a particular focus on fintech and payment in the vibrant African market. Join me in welcoming Munya, an influential figure in the world of finance and technology with over 25 years of experience in driving growth, expansion, and strategic partnership, specifically in Africa. In short, he is the man who solves finance problem for Africa.
Thank you, Deepak. What an incredible introduction. Excited to be with you today and sharing some ideas and thoughts around the continent of Africa. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You deserve, Munia. You are doing a lot of great activities. I'm following you and I'm seeing you. Yeah, and not from a few days. Like it's been more than 3 4 years, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Thank
So
you.
but yeah, but Munia, the important part here is, I know you are in the industry from last 25 years. So you contributed in various industry, whether it's telecom, finance, payments. But what is your key highlights from your diverse career journey?
Deepak, that's a very good question. I was thinking about this the other day, and for me, I kind of like to break down my takeaways into three. So I think the first is that career growth for me has not been linear. When I
Mm,
kind of look back at my career, and if you asked me fresh out of university, did I think that I would be in payments and fintech? The answer is no. No, I did at that time when I graduated from university. Was thinking about the development route, working for the World Bank, and the crazy thing about how the world works is I did end up working for the World Bank, but much later in my career. And
mm,
so that's been exciting, and also sort of lessons learned about the fact that career growths are not linear, and that's a testament specifically to my background experience, having come from financial services, and then I've worked in telco. I've had the opportunity to work within the venture capital space, and then the last 7 years have been incredibly rewarding because it's brought out my passion for Africa, but also in the context of financial inclusion and fintech and payments. So again, I think that's a real key sort of journey that I've gone through. The second part, I think, is that uh, I don't believe that things just happen by accident. I think there is, and if you are a spiritual person, I do believe and firmly believe in God, but I think that things happen for a reason. And in some instances, some of my most profound, interesting career growth opportunities have really come about because of an alignment of opportunities. Sometimes
mm,
people, when they think about their career growth and what's happened and why they didn't get the job they didn't get, or the breakthrough or funding, whatever that might be in your life, I also firmly believe that there's a certain alignment that has to happen, and I think that's something I've constantly thought about when I look back at my career. Then the last one is very much something I believe in, especially in the context of Africa, which is there's a term called Ubuntu.
Ubuntu.
And
Mm.
the simple way to think about Ubuntu is that I am because we are.
Oh, wow.
And that's a very profound statement, because when I also look back at my career, I firmly believe that part of the career has been shaped by relationships that I've had, whether
Mm,
it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's even mentors, and that whole ecosystem, I think, plays a significant role in one's journey. And I think that, especially in the context of Africa, I always talk about Ubuntu, meaning that you simply cannot do anything on your own. You have family, friends, you've got a whole ecosystem that really helps, move along, especially in my context, my career.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. The Ubuntu I heard is the second time,
Mhm.
right? But
Yeah.
thanks for refreshing my memories as well. Right. And you rightly mentioned about the relationship. This has to play a very key role. Your support and the guidance and the luck which come from there is make the person who you are today. Right. And
Absolutely.
important part is you always emphasize a lot about Africa. I heard you on various shows where presentation which you talk about. What do you think? What is the best chances for the businesses to grow in the African continent?
Yeah. So, I think you just have to look at the demographics. I mean, over the past sort of 10 years, and part of why I actually became a LinkedIn influencer, or was asked to be a LinkedIn influencer, was really because I was trying to articulate the message that Africa is the future.
Mm,
And I think over the past 5, 6 years, you've seen that in terms of the venture capital funding, the general GDP growth across the African markets. There was always this narrative which troubled me, which was that Africa was this continent that didn't have any economic prospects for the future. It was full of hunger, and having been in the tech ecosystem, I realized we weren't doing a good job of articulating these incredible stories that happen on the continent. And that's really where my LinkedIn influencer status came about, was that I was deliberate and continue to be deliberate about sharing the incredible stories, and in my specific case around fintech and payments across the continent. One of the, call it the epiphanies for me, was that I'd say this was about 2010, when I was
mm,
still living in the US and I was working for a company there in the US, and I was putting together some presentations and decks.
mm,
And that was when I was looking at mobile money, and you look at what's happened with the likes of M-Pesa. And at that time, I believe they had maybe 1 million or 2 million users maximum at that
mm,
time. And you look at where the business now is, it's 133 million, 140, 150 million and up in terms of mobile money. So that's just one, and that's the constant sort of big breakthrough. You hear a lot about M-Pesa, but within M-Pesa, there's a whole ecosystem. Many
mm,
startups. I mean, in the fintech ecosystem across Africa, there are 1,000 startups, right, in the fintech space that are really trying to solve problems. So I think for me, those are just examples where we see so much potential for the continent. And not only that, this is also something that I always continue to remind businesses that are not doing business in Africa, that by 2050, one
mm.
in four of us will be African. One in four of us will be African,
Wow.
right? And so if you are not playing that space, and we've also heard Meg Whitman, the former CEO of eBay, and now the US ambassador for Kenya to
Mm,
Kenya, has talked about that, is that, if Africa is only 1% of your vision, you need to rethink that, right? And I think that that continues to be my narrative of why there needs to be sort of a focus on Africa and the continent. Demographic dividend, young population, mobile first,
yeah.
human capital. You mentioned that earlier, is that again, McKinsey's come up, and especially Archer Leke, who's the chairman of McKinsey Africa, talked about Africa's next big opportunities. It's human capital. So all the data suggests that this is a continent that I think the world should be taking very seriously.
Right, right. You mentioned the names, and you mentioned the vision which the Africa is moving forward. And definitely that I'm pretty much sure by 2050, you guys can achieve the target which you have laid for yourself. Now, coming to your specific role, right? Because as you mentioned, the mobile money ecosystem is very huge, right? So, as the head of the African business development at mPOWER Financing, right? What strategies are you implementing to drive this growth and expansion in the African market?
Yes, another very good question, Deepak. So, for maybe our listeners who might not be familiar with Empower Financing, we are a mission-driven fintech that provides educational loans, zero collateral, zero cosigner loans for students looking to study in the US and Canada. And Africa continues to be one of our key markets in terms of growth. And so when I joined the company, my role really was to continue to expand the Africa portfolio and help as many African students who are looking for that opportunity to study in the US and Canada. And so a lot of that strategy for me has been understanding and appreciating that while we talk about digital and the growth of digital across the continent, especially given the mobile phone penetration, it's still important to realize that you have to have a combination of strategies that's both digital and going back to what I talked about Ubuntu, which is relationships. I've always believed that Africa is a continent where relationships do matter, and it doesn't necessarily have to be transactional in nature, but there's a key component of building those relationships. So that has been my strategy as we've grown throughout the continent. In our business, we have a combination of very significant partners that we work with across our African footprint. And then also, we've got a very strong sort of digital, presence as we continue to help and promote the opportunity for some of our customers.
Yeah, I like the word which you mentioned, the transactional. The businesses should not run on a transaction. They should just run
Yeah.
on the emotions, and emotions is your relationship, right? So that is a key to success. A very good message and very bold message. In fact, thank you. Thanks, Munya. And now, if we look at your achievements, right? So one of the things which catch my eye was you are expert in Six Sigma and the operational excellence strategies, right? So how do you integrate these methodologies into your business development, activities as well as in the project management approach? And especially
Yeah.
where the market like the fintech and the payments, they are dynamic in nature.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, I was trained and certified as a Six Sigma black belt in 1999.
Oh, wow.
So this is show you how old I am, right? But what's interesting about Six Sigma is that it becomes a mindset, right? I don't now practice Six Sigma on a day-to-day basis, but I can tell you it has changed my view forever since then in terms of how to view processes, how to view waste. You look at non-value added activities. That's something that I'm always thinking through as a business is, are there things that are not adding value? And what's interesting now is you look at the likes of ChatGPT and all the AI and machine, all of those technologies are really stress testing this idea of non-valued activities, right? And so for me, I'm always in the mindset that when I'm looking at with any expansion opportunities or customer, and we even talk about the 80-20 rule a lot, right? That's kind of very Six Sigma based, is that 20% of my customers, right, basically will generate maybe 80% of my revenue. I mean, those are all kind of based on the fundamental of Six Sigma and operational excellence and how you get better at various processes to really help drive the business. So it's something that stuck with me, and it continues to be part of the way I think. I think it becomes a mindset in terms of, look, are there ways you can continuously improve a process, right? Until you get to that 99.99%. But yeah, I think that's really been something that stuck with me throughout my entire career.
Right. But I don't know, like it's in 1999, you're a black belt.
Yeah. And
Still
Deepak,
young.
what's really interesting for me at that time, interestingly, we talk about Six Sigma, is that the company I worked for at that time, we were one of the very first companies that started to do Six Sigma in the services industry. So our CEO at that time actually had spent some time with the executives at GE and Motorola and came back and said, look, we need to think about Six Sigma, not in a manufacturing point of view, but in the services industry. So that was quite fascinating at that time, is to sort of also put Six Sigma in the perspective of services industry, and we've seen a lot of incredible efficiencies, especially around Six Sigma and services businesses.
Right. And at that time, the concept was totally new, right? And
Yeah,
just
yeah,
to customize as per your requirement, which is services segment, that itself required a creativity.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So nowadays, if we talk about our future trends and the predictions, right? And now everyone is talking about the predictions, predictive analysis based on the AI and others. So what is the emerging trends which you see, which you foresee shaping the future specifically for fintech and payment industry, and how this can relate within the African context, not from a global side, and how, what approach which you are making or strategies you are making to stay ahead of that curve.
Yeah, no, Deepak, another very good question about crystal balls. So, in terms of emerging trends, I continue to be bullish that Africa still has an immense opportunity for growth, right? I mean, we still have more than 350 million people who might not have access to some sort of financial services, whether it's a bank account, insurance product.
Mm.
We still have a lot of work to do, and I think that for me continues to be where that trend will continue. Is how do you enable more and more people to be brought into the financial ecosystem, because it's critical. It's no different. It's a human right, really. The same way you look at air and water, is that being able to have some sort of financial services is critical for bringing people out of poverty. So I think that will be something that we will continue to see. So within the context of that kind of growth, I keep an eye on what's happening within, sort of blockchain and cryptocurrency and digital currencies in general, right? In terms of speed of transactions, in terms of just being able to have more and more people within the financial ecosystem included. So I think for me, I keep a fairly important sort of thumb on the pulse in terms of that specific industry. I think the second for me
Mhm.
is really about looking at again, we can't ignore the impact of AI and machine learning, and I think that will continue to be more and more a part of our ecosystem. The challenge I certainly have, especially for ecosystems like Africa, where we do need to produce more than 1 million to 2 million jobs a year, in order to keep up with our demographic dividend, is seeing what can be done in that area in terms of employment creation, also coupled with the radical changes we're seeing in technology. So I think that to me is something I'm keeping a real eye on. I think the third for me is that, and this again is really specifically relating to Africa, is that um, it's still very uh, we still have a lot more work to do around integration
Mhm.
within the continent. I mean, there have been a couple of key developments around the Africa continental free trade sort of agreements in area, and seeing more and more cross-border trade across Africa. I think that becomes very important because we're a very, very big continent, a very powerful continent, and I think that area around being able to see more and more cross-border trade and money movement becomes very, very critical for the future.
Yeah.
So I think those are the three things I think that I'd like to kind of see from an emerging trend perspective. And what that means for our business, specifically for mPOWER, is just more and more opportunities for students to think about careers that that are in line with where the future is, and whether those students end up working globally, or they come back and hopefully back to the continent and work. We have a solid skill set that's ready to tackle the future.
Right, right. And what about this? I'm pretty much sure, as per the previous records, the smartphones, which is the base of, using all these financial transactions, they are also growing big time in Africa. So now more and more people are getting the smartphones in their hand now, affordable.
Yes, and so the last sort of report I had read is that there's a Chinese company called Techno that has
Mm,
sold more devices than Apple or
mm,
Samsung in Africa, right? And you bring up that point is one of the reasons why that's been the case is really around affordability. And I know there've been some studies that have been done around sort of um, the tipping point of what's the average cost of a device that really would significantly increase the number of devices that can be put in African in Africans' hands. And I think the average price is around $25. So we're still far from there. And then you've got the other complication that it's not just about a phone, it's about a smartphone. So how do you get affordable smartphone at $25? So I think that's kind of where we run into a little bit of the challenge. But yes, I mean the mobile device is so critical for everything we do across the continent. We are mobile only, or mobile first, I should say, and that's become very, very critical in terms of financial services. We see what happens with even apps like WhatsApp and Telegram and WeChat. I mean that's the world that a lot of Africans, including myself, live and work in. And even transact in. So yes, the smartphone, it cannot be minimized in terms of the ability for that small device to drive financial inclusion, but also great economic prospects for the continent.
Yeah, right. Totally agree. But other than involved into all these activities, so how you are, taking a time and balancing your roles and maintain a focus specifically on your personal growth and the well-being. So how you do that?
That's always a challenge. I must admit, it's a challenge. I'm tasked with growing a portfolio across Africa. That's really my full-time role. But I also take very seriously some other responsibilities that I think are really important for me, including family. And also, I spend quite a lot of time, at least to one or two or three entrepreneurs and startups, working and helping them either think through their business. I do some work again with, I've done some work with the Visa Accelerator program. I've done some work with Plug and Play across Africa, and then also with Chapter 54 in terms of helping startups, or I'll say scale-ups, who may be in Europe thinking about expansion across Africa. So all of that is very important. I believe that there are times where there's certain things I cannot do or cannot physically be there, but I'm always willing to give some time to entrepreneurs and startups as they think through their journey, or they run into some opportunities where I might be able to provide some meaningful input and impact. So yes, always a challenge. Not enough hours in the day, but I think it's also important to have that balance and still be able to enjoy life. So
No, well, they are with the right mentor, because the knowledge and the wisdom which you have definitely going to give the heads up, and yeah, the directions is always important than speed. I always admit that. Once you are on your own, then you can you can run, you can fly, you can walk, you can crawl, whatever, but you should know
yeah,
where you are heading up.
oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So, is there any memorable moment in your life, or I'm pretty sure there will be so many, but memorable success story which you want to, share with us, and especially, what value which you have created through your innovations and your wisdom.
Yes. So I think for me, the memorable moment really is a culmination of events, right? That has led me back to the continent. As I talked about this epiphany, and I talked a little bit previously about the mobile money growth across Africa back, back in 2010, and then you look at where the growth of the continent is. For me, making a decision to move from the US back to Africa has been undoubtedly one of the most challenging but most rewarding opportunities in my career. And I think that's important because, especially when I do talk to people who are looking to invest in Africa, and you may be sitting in your cozy office in New York or San Francisco, I always say to people, get on a plane. If you want to see what's happening across the continent, jump on a plane, spend some time in Lagos, in Accra, in Abidjan, in Harare, in Cairo. I mean, there are many incredible African cities, right, that give you a different perspective of what's happening on the continent. And so what I'm excited about, and this is where the culmination of career has been is that I've been very, very fortunate to work with organizations and companies that understand and appreciate that when you're working, you could be working for a US company or a European company, but having feet on the ground and having a real understanding of the nuances, the dynamics of the marketplace really make your product and service a lot more meaningful, not just for the customers you might serve in that market, but even globally. So I think that would be for me a real kind of career highlight of the combination of events that took place from 2010, all right, until 2024, where I've been very fortunate and blessed to be working on the continent and doing what I love.
Yeah, the get on plane is one of my favorite as well. Feel
Yes.
feel the heat, right? Feel the heat, feel what they're
Yes.
looking for, and don't make the PPT or power presentations, sitting at the office and sitting in the remote office.
Absolutely.
And also this again lead to one another curiosity, that how you look, Africa is a big continent, right? 53 countries, and how you build this long term relationship, and with the clients, maybe who are the new faces for you, or maybe for them you are also a new face, right? So how you develop that relationship, specifically sitting remotely, and how you maintain that trust.
Great, great. Yes, so I think it's important that, and this is where I mentioned earlier about the combination of digital and physical, right? Is that because I'm very active on LinkedIn, I almost always get some person contacting me to say, "Hey, by the way, I loved what you posted, or would love to have a conversation with you." And I'm also very fortunate to have the opportunity to travel across the continent.
Mm.
And so a lot of times, if you actually also look at a lot of my LinkedIn profile or updates when I'm going to countries, I always make an effort to meet with an entrepreneur, a startup business. And the last person I talked about was Eddie. And Eddie is a fascinating story about a young man who's a waiter by day and a crypto trader at night, right?
Ah,
But why I say this is that it's important to build those relationships. They may start virtual in nature, but I think that once people get to see you in person, it's important. So I always you'll find that I'll always do trips across the continent every year or twice a year, because I do think that going out and building those relationships in person, there's nothing that beats that. So it's really a combination of both that's helped me in terms of building those long-term established relationships. And by the way, some of them didn't happen in 2024. Some of those relationships have come to fruition from 25 years ago, 30
wow.
years ago. Some of them might even have come through childhood friends. And so I think this is sort of the interesting part of what I call Ubuntu, which is that it's the cycle of relationships, right? That have been built over time that really help. Yeah.
Wow. And I really, you shared a lot of wisdom, you shared a lot of experiences, but I would like to focus on the advice which you want to give it to the professionals, that how they can able to cope up with this dynamic, which is demand which is coming from the industry, and what should they should do, what mistakes they are doing, and what is your advice to them?
Yeah. Look, another very good question. I know, Deepak, this is an area you're quite passionate about in terms of sort of what's happening across the world. Yes, we're seeing economic growth, but there are many, many companies that are laying people off and people don't know what to do. And so you talk about investing in themselves. So I think that for me, that message is no different from what you talk and articulate, which is that you have to invest in yourself. We are also finding companies globally might not necessarily have these very large budgets to do, learning and development, or there's now a ton of free resources. LinkedIn is one of them. In fact, 3 days ago, I took a quick view of a course for people who are interested in data science, right? I mean, so there are so many resources available, and I think we all need to just invest. We need to invest in ourselves. We need to invest in our future and our career.
Yes.
That's I think for me very, very, very important in terms of what individuals could be doing in terms of really trying to develop themselves. And again, I talked about the Six Sigma part of that, right? Is that it's also just all the interesting developments that are happening in the world around machine learning and AI and data science.
Mm.
And that's just a portion. There's a lot more that's happening globally, but I think you can get the sense that it's just important to keep yourself relevant
Mm.
in a very fast and dynamic changing in the world that we're living in.
True. Very true. Yeah. So this I know that our discussion can go long and long. Just in the
Mm.
interest of time, I would like to halt our discussion and thank you, Munia, for bringing this immense knowledge, immense wisdom, your experience, your learnings, everything which you have, which you are doing for the society and building the Africa. Thank you for that. And
No,
yeah,
thank
it's a
you.
very great
Thank you,
conversation.
Deepak. Likewise. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
And that brings us to the end of another enriching video episode of Value Seller Talks with Deepak Bajaj, and special guest to our guest Mr. Munia for sharing his invaluable insights and what is happening in that part of the continent which most of the us are totally unaware. And I always insist, I always mention that Africa is the place where you can invest, and it's the right time to invest in Africa. There's a plenty of human resources, natural resources, and the opportunities which you can build. And association with Munia can give you a great gateway insight to the big continent. And until next time, I'm Deepak Bajaj, logging off and urging you to stay empowered and keep seeking the value in every aspect of your life. Thank you so much. Take care.